My name is Ed Frazier, for those of you who don't know me. I'm on the Otsego County Board of Representatives. I am the chairman of the Public Safety Committee, who organized part of this through our EMS and 911, this presentation this evening. I'd like to take a second. I've been asked to introduce, we have other county board reps here. We have Meg Kennedy from District 5 here in Milford and Hartwick. We have Keith McCarty, District 9, Springfield Center, Dave Bliss from Middlefield, District 7, and we have 3 newly elected representatives here, Michelle Farwell from District 2, Butternuts, Danny Lakeman, District 13 out of the city, and Liz Shannon, District 14 out of the city of Oneonta also. We have representatives from Senator Seward's office. We have lots of the city council. We have the town supervisors, many are here, and welcome to everyone. What we're going to do tonight is we have representatives from New York State Department of Transportation. We have Justin Zimmerman, and we have Tony Signorelli. We have XNG representatives. Matt Smith is here. He's going to do a PowerPoint for us. We have from New York State Police, we have Sergeant Robert Kidder. He's in charge of our commercial vehicle unit of this region for the New York State Police. And we have Art Klingler, who is our Otsego County Emergency Services Director. And they will be offering information and answering questions at the end. We have the room till 8 o'clock. Everybody's been invited to fill out a card with a question on it. If they're redundant or multiple, your specific question may not get answered in the essence of time. But we're going to attempt to answer every question that's posed. Thank you. So, we're going to start off with DOT. Would like to make any type of statement or presentation here?
Well, I'm going to start off just by giving a very, very general overview of what DOT does.
Would you like the microphone?
Let me move over here. Now, I work in the Regional Traffic Office in Binghamton. We have 7 counties, Otsego County being one of them. Our counties do extend from Binghamton all the way up to the Albany County line, so we take care of all of I-88 and these other routes of interest through Otsego County. And what I do in the Traffic Safety and Mobility Office is work with engineering. I mean, we work with everything from roadside safety, which is guide rail and signing, pavement markings, things like this. We deal an awful lot with making sure that our roads across the board are as safe as they can be for all users, trucks, pedestrians, bicyclists, cars, everything. So that's where I'm coming from with regard to this discussion, is making sure that everything that's on the road has an opportunity to travel with as much safety as possible. And to just kind of put this into context with, what I know of this type of situation, there have been other industries that have ramped up over the years and generated more truck traffic than, the roads had previously seen. Some corridors are fairly close to this. Through Chenango County is a good example. And at the time that happened, that those industries ramped up, we took, a lot of concern from local officials, from residents, from other businesses along those routes. And what we did in response was to take those routes, do, a thorough investigation of how much additional traffic was being added. Were there additional accidents that were occurring? Were those accidents related to just additional traffic, or were there circumstances associated with the roads themselves that needed to be improved? And as part of that, we did several improvements. Immediately, we went out and did additional signing, for instance, at a sharp curve where, there might have been run-off-the-road accidents. That's the type of thing that, we can do quickly. Along those same lines, we look at things that we can do that are more long-term. Can we reconstruct that curve so that it's more friendly for large vehicles, higher speed vehicles, whatever may be the case. So those are the types of things that, we try to engineer our way through. And that's kind of why I'm here, is to make sure that we're looking at everything possible from that standpoint to make sure that we're doing the best we can.
I'm Justin Zimmerman. I'm also with New York State DOT. I supervise the upstate motor carrier investigators out of the Motor Carrier Compliance Bureau. My group does compliance reviews on New York State motor carriers, New York State-based motor carriers. We also work hand in hand with Sergeant Kidder's crew, doing roadside inspections, crash investigations, and compliance reviews.
Thank you everyone for coming tonight. My name is Matt Smith. I'm with Express Natural Gas. My intention here is to take you through what we are doing and try to give you a lot more information about the nature of the trucking and hopefully set up a positive Q&A back and forth around some of the issues that folks are concerned about. Very briefly, I think we'll try to cover who we are and obviously what we do, how we operate, and specifically the safety protocols and regulatory compliance that we're going with, and obviously how we work within our communities. Our company was founded in 2012 based on the premise that we could offer a lower cost and cleaner fuel, specifically to locations that were not on a gas pipeline or that didn't have alternatives. The focus of our business initially was really focused on oil, heavy oil, bunker fuel, burners, coal, a number of fuels that many folks find to be dirtier fuels and more expensive. And we introduced a trucked gas service to those locations. Over the past 5 years, we've become a leading provider of off-pipeline solutions with trucked gas. For perspective, we do operate across the Northeast and the Northwest. We're also in Eastern Canada. We are servicing, I think just as a reference, 20 or more industries at this point, ranging everything from textiles to paper and pulp mills, mining, hospitals, universities, and a wide range of customers. What we do, we really believe our mission is to bring a low-cost energy to local businesses, bring gas to regions that don't have that alternative, to keep the jobs where they are. It is a simple fact that if we can save a big industrial in a rural area 20 or 30% on their fuel, we have a real impact on that business's ability to stay competitive and keep jobs in that area. We really have two focuses for our business. We bring gas directly to local businesses and institutions. And we also bring gas to pipelines and utilities so that they can bring the gas through the pipeline to those same institutions where there isn't capacity today. Thought I'd talk about in a little bit of detail with some pictures what we do, how we operate. Talk a little bit about what compressed gas is for everyone in the room and the drop and swap model that's the basis for our truck deliveries. Give you a view of our terminals, the trucks themselves, and obviously the routing decisions that we make. I think first and foremost, what is compressed natural gas? It's simply natural gas in a pressurized form for transportation. I think the simplest analogy is a scuba tank. We take gas at lower pressure and we step it up so we can get more density so we can transport it cost effectively. The issue or key to our service that I think makes truck transportation important is this drop and swap model. Essentially, the gas flows from our trucks to our customers. And that's important because it means that every time to keep a continuous flow of gas, we send a truck, we deliver it, we hook it into our system to flow gas, and then we take an empty truck away. That's why you see trucks going back and forth. We're different than a fuel oil, we're different than a propane. We're not taking a liquid and putting it in a tank. Our trucks carry the gas until the gas is dispensed to our customers. Our trailers look a lot like any gas station you might see. Our terminals. We fill them here at a pipeline location. We take it to locations that are not in a pipe or that may be a pipe that doesn't have enough gas. I think one of the things that, I'm anticipating questions, you'll often see our trucks traveling 2 at a time. We fill them that way. It's more efficient. It allows us to get essentially more gas into the trucks so we make fewer deliveries. Our tractors themselves are an important part of what we do. I think the CNG fuel on these tractors is an important distinction. We obviously use the fuel that we also deliver. The CNG tractors are quieter, they're more fuel efficient, and they got cleaner emissions. So they're a big part of the supply chain for how we deliver our gas. Regarding routing is based around efficiency and safety. And those are really the 2 key factors we look at. For efficiency, we take the most direct routes with the least traffic and the lowest tolls. Those are the 3 factors we look at. The map you're looking at shows a density map radiating around Albany with more than 10,000 vehicles, 1,500 to 10,000 a day, or less than 1,500. Obviously, from our perspective, finding routes that are not heavily trafficked is a much more efficient means of routing. From a safety perspective, all the roads we transit, we have to comply with the same state regs and regulations and rules, as well as any federal requirements that those entities may be enforcing. Specifically in regard to weight, I know this will come up when we talk with the Sergeant as well, our trucks have to meet the same weight requirements as any other vehicle hauled. And we also have to abide by the same hours of service rules on our drivers. I think because traffic is a topic of concern, it helps to put traffic, at least from our perspective, in a numbers game. A typical McDonald's will see 700 cars in and out in a day, more so in an urban area. And typically in our model, if we're going through a community, you might see from 1 to a couple of trucks an hour. That may be becoming perceived as twice that many because they do go up and come back on the same routes. But in total, we wouldn't compare to McDonald's at lunchtime. Now that may not be the way you're experiencing it, but from a truck volume perspective, from a permit perspective, our trucks are actually very low volume compared to other permitted uses for traffic. Our Operations Control Center is a critical part of what our business is based around. We track and monitor every single trailer, every single truck on every single route. Every tractor has a black box recorder in it that records GPS location, it records driver behavior, it records speed and safety data, hard braking events. We review this data with our drivers. It's an important part of our safety program to review that on a regular basis to ensure that our drivers are complying with all the road regulations. I think it's also important that every trailer has integrated safety systems, very different than the kinds of tanker trucks that many people are familiar with. To be quite blunt, these trailers are newer and the safety requirements put on them today than the typical propane or fuel oil truck that was built and designed 40 years ago are very different. They have integrated fire systems, they have integrated gas pressure release systems that are an important part of the safety components. As I said, we are doing this 24 hours a day. We have 2 people on staff at all times monitoring all of our operations. Safety protocols, we tend to group them into 2 key areas, employee training and vehicles. Obviously, our focus on employees is to start by hiring the best people. That involves a comprehensive background check. We do a complete review of their employment history, we do rigorous road testing, and we're continually reviewing those drivers. On the vehicle side, all of our equipment is checked 3 times a day, and that's just standard operating procedure. We have a very aggressive preventive maintenance program. We do both work in-house and we also have third-party inspections on our vehicles. I think inside all of these canisters, for the extent anybody wants to visualize them, they are several inches thick. These are not simple little steel metal tubes. They are designed and tested and certified by the US DOT for some very severe incident testing. 60 mile per hour impacts, 60 caliber gunshots. These are very, very tough canisters. Other safety practices, we have a safety committee that reviews all the concerns. I think this is a Important, we'll provide some community contact information at the end. We take calls from the community, we take emails from the community. We take every one of them seriously. We respond within 24 hours. If we can find documentation through our black box that supports any concerns about driver behavior, that driver will get at least initial warning. If they're not terminated for the incident, they will be terminated on a second warning. We take it very, very seriously. If safety issues are raised in any aspect by our own employees, by our customers, by any of the communities, we have a committee internally that addresses that on a bi-monthly basis. Our employees comply with all the training regulations for the typical entities. This is not a complete list, but obviously OSHA from our employee safety, Department of Transportation, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and what's surprising to some folks, but as aspects of this, the Pipeline Hazardous Safety Materials Administration. I'll say that 3 times quickly. And also state and local training. We spend an enormous amount of time training first responders in our communities simply because we are another type of incident to respond to. It's not more dangerous, it's not less. In fact, most first responders will tell you they would much rather show up on the scene, all else awfully equal, to deal with a CNG truck rather than a propane or a fuel oil truck, which are much more hazardous situations to deal with given the safety equipment we have on the cargo. We have a strong collaborative relationship with all of those agencies. I think it's helpful to understand how much work we do, not just in Otsego County, but in all of the communities where we work. Obviously, there's always the opportunity to provide more training, more education. This is part of that effort. But we do emergency response planning, hazardous materials planning, security awareness. Driver policies and procedures are shared with all the first responder communities. Driver safety manuals are often reviewed with those same first responders so as to understand what our drivers are expected to do. I think it's just a helpful image here to see the range of entities. Specifically for this incident in Herkimer County, we had the city, we had the state representations, emergency management agencies, all invited to training on a regular basis. In the unlikely event of a trailer incident, we take them incredibly seriously. We have had 3 incidences in the last 12 months. We have made over 25,000 deliveries during that same period across many states and across international borders. But we've had 3 incidents. Each one of them has had a detailed, comprehensive review. At the time it happened, there's a very clear protocol and safety response. This is shared with all the first responders prior to that so that everyone knows their roles and responsibilities. We will immediately notify the county or city emergency response team. We have all that contact information in our operations command center for anyone en route. We provide all the known details immediately because we're in contact with that driver. We have first responder support dispatched immediately. We then immediately dispatch our own resources to the same site, safety coordinator and gas engineer at a minimum to coordinate any response on site. We coordinate with emergency personnel to secure the scene, and obviously the individuals take priority. I know that's somehow easy to look at it just as a truck, but there's a driver behind that wheel, and those are the people that we're most concerned about from the moment this happens. We obviously, once that situation is confirmed, we assess the damage to the status of the tanks and the trailers, and we notify the National Response Center and establish an incident number following that. That's our responsibility. We execute a controlled gas release if necessary and with the approval of the first responders as part of bringing the truck up. It's often not necessary, but if there is a concern about any of the tanks, methane is lighter than air, we'll release that gas to create a safer situation. And then we remove the equipment and restore the road access to vehicles. As an example of the regulatory oversight, fortunately we're here with the Department of Transportation tonight, we can ask questions. Primary agency from a safety perspective, we have the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. They enforce safety regulations related to anything to do with crashes, injuries, and fatalities, specifically for large transportation vehicles. We've had 2 comprehensive audits in the last 36 months, excuse me. We've had the highest score on those audits for safety. Now, to be clear, that records are all publicly available online. I will encourage you, I'll share the website for that information. The highest rating is satisfactory. There's no better safety than satisfactory, because you can always try to improve. OSHA, Occupational Health and Safety Administration, safety and health of all of our employees. Again, they are in charge of any reportable employee accidents. That information is also publicly available. We have not had a reportable incident other than we did have a driver injury in September in an accident. That has been a major focus for our company since.
Just one?
New York Department of Transportation regulates the trucks, buses, and commercial vehicles. But specifically, one of the enforcement tools is random and targeted inspections. I anticipate questions, but about how the inspections are done, I think there's the perfect individuals here tonight to talk about their experience specifically with our trucks. The federal motor carrier safety audits, I think, are most important because that information is public. I think it's important for anybody who's got concerns to take a look. The website itself is intuitive. It's fmcsa.dot.gov. I think what I'd like to emphasize and try to communicate to folks is that there are positive impacts on New York State, on the communities where we work. We've made significant investments in New York State, and we've created a lot of jobs. And those things aren't always visible if we're driving through your community, but there are a lot of people in and around your community who are employed, who are getting very good wages and very stable jobs as a result of the work we do. We're very proud of that. I think that's easy to overlook when it's just a truck driving by. We do a lot of hands-on work with, as I've noted, emergency response training. Specifically, we try to maintain very open communication with any elected officials. I'm excited to see the county representation here tonight, and obviously look forward to meeting all the newly elected officials. We also do a lot of work in our host communities. That may not be as visible to those communities that we are transiting, but whether it's the food pantry, our employees have a voice in where the dollars go. We specifically focus on food and children, so we think that has the most impact in our communities. Just an example. All folks in New York who've been working on various community service projects in the last year. I'd like to at least wrap with this, and I think there's 3 different types of contact. Obviously, if anyone has an emergency concern, 911 is the appropriate number to call. If there are safety concerns, we want to know immediately. To the extent anyone in this room has ever used either our phone number or our contact information, thank you. Because I think we will have responded within 24 hours and we will have taken action based on it. But we have direct safety concerns. The more immediate the response is, the more we can act on it promptly. We have general questions at any time. Something about the way we're doing business, something about an interest in the community. Can we be more supportive? Are we engaged? Are we hiring? Are we doing any of these activities? community@xng.com. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk this evening.
Thanks, Matt. Now, Sergeant Kidder from New York State Police Commercial Unit Division is going to review some of the rules and regs that he enforces.
Good evening, my name is Rob Kidder. I'm the supervisor for the New York State Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Unit, covering the southern tier region of New York State. My area basically is all of Troop C, which is a 7-county region, starting over in Tompkins County, down in Tioga, Broome, Delaware, Shenango, Otsego, and Cortland counties. So obviously, this is this is our area that we patrol, and that my guys patrol. Again, my function is strictly highway safety with commercial vehicles, and that includes it includes passenger buses, it includes box trucks, it includes natural gas tankers, fuel tankers, anything like that. That's basically our focus. The other focus that we have, obviously, is my guys are available 24/7 to recall for any type of accident that happens or hazardous material spills. And just to kind of give you a little idea on what we use for sites and regulations that we have for inspecting vehicles. Contrary to a number of beliefs, we don't have any fixed weigh stations within my region in Troop C. We do use a lot of the DOT rest areas as inspection sites. Some of them have lights on us for us, so we can actually direct the trucks to come in and stop, but there's not actually scales in the ground to actually weigh them when they go across. So all of my unit is equipped with portable scales, so we do weigh the trucks portably when we feel that they're overweight. Obviously, you know, that's one large portion of keeping our highways safe, is to make sure that we're not having overweight vehicles that can't stop, things like that. So what that does lead is, when we're not working those fixed sites, those rest areas, my guys basically have to use probable cause to stop a truck. So if, you know, just because a truck is traveling down the highway, I can't just randomly pick him over, hit the lights, and pull him over right on the side of the road just because he's on the highway. We have to see some sort of a violation. It can be something as simple as a mud flap. It can be something like a placard, you know, something on there. Could be a bulb out. Could be, you know, that he's speeding. Maybe he missed a turn signal. But we're a probable cause state, so we have to have a reason to actually stop a truck and engage them, with the exception of the times that we're just randomly pulling in and running a fixed site, which either, like I said, is either flashing lights or signs. So, one of the questions that got posed to my office was, you know, talking about restrictions on highways, things like that. My region also encompasses a number of roadways that are traveled frequently by garbage haulers. Garbage coming out of New York City, going out to Waterloo, construction and demolition debris that's being transported out to Painted Post, to the landfill out there. So Skinny Atlas had a similar situation. They were obviously unhappy with the garbage haulers that were traveling up and around the lake. And one way the DOT was actually able to restrict them was because they're traveling in an overweight capacity. So when they're running up on a permitted load in New York State, without a permit, you're allowed, for a normal tractor trailer on a state highway, you're allowed 80,000 pounds. If you're going to exceed that, and New York State will allow companies to exceed that based on the weight ratings on the vehicle itself, based on the axle ratings, and they will allow a normal tractor trailer, 5-axle tractor trailer, to go up to 102,000 pounds. But they limit the roads that they can travel on when they're loaded. So basically what they did is, for any permitted vehicle, they set up a restricted highway route for that, but it only applies to them when they're running in overweight condition. So for those particular vehicles that were running up to Skinny Atlas in a loaded capacity, that took those roads away. However, when they come back, they're under the legal weight of 80,000 pounds or less, they're free to travel that road back in the opposite direction. So I just kind of wanted to let you know that the restrictions in New York State that are in place allow restrictions on roadway based on width, length, height, and weight. So that's the way that we can restrict traffic in New York. Beyond that, if a vehicle is traveling as within legal length, legal width, legal height, and legal weight, they're free to travel on pretty much any state highway that we have in New York. So again, I just kind of want to bring that up. That is one of the questions that we do get quite a bit. I'll speak to my counterpart is here from SP Oneonta. Their office fields a number of calls referencing speeding tractor trailers, specifically the XNG vehicles. I can tell, from their efforts, they put forth an aggressive effort, put out extra patrols, ran in numerous details trying to determine if that was an actual factual issue that was having. However, the efforts that were conducted by the road patrol guys turned up absolutely no instances of XNG trucks being caught speeding. From a roadside inspection perspective, from the complaints that I got, I can tell you that I increased the enforcement efforts of my troopers, specifically pulling them in, looking at XNG specifically, And again, my counterpart up in Troop D, which covers the German flat area, again on their route, basically did the same thing. As with any mechanical truck that goes down the road, you are going to have some what we call violations when they come down. Tires are going to go flat, certain things are going to happen to those vehicles. But all in all, I can tell you that the rating that this company had in our interactions and even my personal inspections on their equipment, you know, the violations that we noted were very, very negligible or not at all. So, again, it's just a little background on what we do. And I guess we're going to get into the question and answer section after this.
Thank you, Sergeant. Now we're going to hear from Art Klingler, who is our Emergency Services Coordinator for Otsego County, how our county is prepared in case of any type of accident or mishap.
Art? From the emergency services standpoint, we have a setup with the 911 center. In the event there is any incident involving an XNG trailer, the normal dispatch procedures are followed as far as dispatching the agency that covers that specific district where the incident has taken place. We've also added a separate or an additional step that any time an accident is involving one of these vehicles, that our office, my office, the Office of Emergency Services, the fire coordinator's office is toned automatically to come out to that scene. As Matt mentioned, they have offered training. We have had 2 training sessions with any department in the county that was interested. We trained over 60 people in the process of responding out. Over half of the fire departments have representatives that attended that training. We have spoken to Matt about possibly setting up a second training class or a second day of training classes so that we can get even more departments involved. Departments that may not have made the first or possibly have some other questions that have come up after they've seen the trucks in action. So they're very willing to do that. We try to keep our departments educated on what's out there. We encourage them to ask questions. We encourage them to reach out to our office or directly to XNG, find the answers that they need. Our priority is the priority of any incident that we go to is life safety, property preservation, scene stabilization. We follow the same process, whether it be a fire call, whether it be an MVA, whether it be a truck, whether it be a car. We follow the same process. We have the same steps. We take every one of them seriously. And from XNG standpoint, they have been very cooperative with us. We're comforted with the fact knowing that those vehicles travel in pairs. If there is an incident, usually within 5 to 7 minutes, we have another truck that has come upon the scene that is able to assist us. The incident that we did have in the town of Otsego, within 45 minutes, we had engineers and safety people on the scene in addition to the trucks that already stopped to assist on the scene to assess what was going on. Again, safety is the main factor that we have. XNG, when they have come to the scene, have been working very well with us. We've had no issues. Discussions, decisions have all been made as a group. It's nothing that is forced on us, and we're appreciative of that, and we look forward to the continued relationship with them. Thank you.
So we split up your questions. If there were a bunch of repeated questions, we just took one of those that handled that idea. DOT is going to start now. They're going to answer read the question and answer, give the best answer they have, and we'll try to work through everything we have. Thank you. Dick, you got something?
No question and answer with the audience.
Pardon me?
No question and answer with the audience directly.
We had everybody, so we didn't answer the same questions. We had everybody fill out cards.
If I ask you a question, everybody hears it, and there's no need to ask it.
He's going to read it off. So the
I didn't write it, but I have some.
I encourage you to fill out cards, sir.
We need to have follow-ups. We need to be able to like follow
Yeah,
up.
we need to, you know,
Let's answer the questions and then see if we need a follow-up.
I want to
This is a
ask
waste
Matt
of
Smith
time.
a couple of questions that weren't on my card.
Can
I
we-
came here to ask questions, not to hear a bunch of blowhards.
Can we please follow the format? Let them answer some questions, see if there are
This
others.
is a waste of my time. You know
I'm
that?
sorry, sir.
Let me ask you a question.
Sir,
Is the
please
routes and
let-
trucks
please
take
let-
just the bottom line? Is that it? Is that the one
Please,
thing?
please let the gentleman speak.
Is that what it is? Because you're ruining people's lives. It's not the safety thing. I'm not worried about the safety.
Please
I
let the
moved
gentleman
here for quality of life, and 80 trucks pass my house every day. Okay? My property values are going down. What if one of those trucks flipped over on the side of the road on Canarega Lake?
Please sit down.
Explosion or not, you kill
people.
people in houses. Use the damn highways that nobody uses. Nothing. No answer. Nothing.
I'm sorry.
Bought and paid for.
All right, well, I'm going to go through these two questions that came to me for a DOT response. And the first question is, how many trucks are on the road? It didn't mention a specific road. It didn't really even give a specific location on a road. So what I can say to answer that the best I can is that when we first got a request in to take a look at this situation a few months ago, one of the first reactions we did was to take a look and see what historic counts we had. And most of the roads within Otsego County get counted by DOT as a routine every 2 years. Those counts typically are both volume, which is all vehicles, and class, which is the type of vehicle. So looking through the roads within Otsego County that were of concern, we realized that we didn't have anything that was more recent than 2015, which in a way is good because that gives us a baseline before this industry really ramped up in this area, and it gives us a kind of a starting point. But we needed something more current, so we took action to get counts for 2017. So that's what we did. Now, there's a few ways to look at counts. There's looking at overall traffic volume, there's looking at percentage of different types of vehicles, there's looking at percentage of certain types of vehicles that are, in classes. So to go through, and I don't want to get, too far into the obscure here, but we did that. We looked at what we had in 2015, and we looked at what we have now in 2017.
There were no XNG trucks in 2015.
That's the point, sir. That's the point, is that we had like a baseline before and then after, point. Good point.
We just want to know how many XNG trucks.
Well, that is where it gets tougher, is that our counts do not specify what the vehicle is hauling or who owns it. They are simply, this is a tractor trailer, this is a 10-wheeler, this is a passenger car.
Why don't we have Matt Smith answer this question?
I was asked this question, how many trucks are on the road? So, to give that answer, and to give it based on the road and give it based on what we have, I'll start with Route 205, and these are averages. We take counts for a minimum of a week, no more usually than 2 weeks, and then we average it by day of the week and time of day. So I have counts that show different numbers for the different times of day for an average day of the week. And, I don't know if there's a point in going through each one, but like a high hour on, say, Route 28 is, in the neighborhood of 10 trucks. That's a high hour for Route 28. That's like a midday hour. That's how many 18-wheeler trucks are on Route 28.
So that's like every 5 minutes.
Well, I can only speak to the data I have. Now, that's 18-wheeler trucks. That's not every other type of truck that there is. That's 18-wheelers.
Yeah, and
So-
pretty much the only 18-wheelers going by my house are XNG trucks.
Exactly.
So, you know, that's what I've got.
Okay.
The other question I have is related
Excuse
to...
me, but people want to know how many they don't want to know total volume of trucks on the road. They want to know how many XNG
Well, it
trucks on the
doesn't
road.
really
All right,
matter
well, I
because
can-
most of the trucks are XNG trucks.
I can let Matt speak to that. I mean, he knows how many trucks they dispatch. I can only tell you the numbers that we collected. And that's not XNG, it's all trucks, you know, total, of any type, milk truck, gas truck, log truck, whatever. The other question I have is, has any study looked at the cost to the county and towns for heavy traffic on local roads? This was directed to me. I can only speak to state roads. I really don't have a feel for, you know, how the local or county, you know, highway programs have been affected by truck traffic. As far as the DOT, we don't study that directly. You know, we rely on highway use tax to make up, you know, the funding that is required. You know, if there are more trucks on the road, if there's more diesel fuel being purchased or more highway use tax being paid, more registrations being purchased, you know, all of that is funneled back through the system to come back to DOT. So we don't really look into, you know, how many trucks are on the road and how that relates to funding. We rely on funding through its sources to take care of that. So that's what I've got.
Thank you.
So 2 cards with very similar questions. I'll read the first one. XNG/DOT. Why don't trucks use the interstate, and are trucks concerned with weigh stations? I know a portion of their route is obviously on the interstate. We do run our normal areas that you'll see us set up as far as fixed sites go along the 88 corridor are Sydney, Unadilla, that area, and also in Worcester. When we are running a fixed site, no matter where it is, what I normally do is have at least one of my officers on State Route 7 just to prevent solely a particular company from trying to get around the inspection area and trying to avoid that inspection area. So when we see a tractor trailer that is from, you know, is knowingly has no business being on State Route 7 other than they're trying to bypass my inspection area, we specifically try to target those because it's obviously, you know, a driver or a company that is trying to get around the system and trying to get around our safety inspection. The other question that was posed, this is a little longer, so bear with me. Statistics from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration show that the national average for most complete roadside inspections, level 1, are 30%. The same statistics show that only 20% of the roadside inspections completed in the state of New York are level 1. The statistics are from data collected during federal fiscal year 2017. Can you explain why New York State does not do a more complete level 1 roadside inspections? To let everybody know in the room, basically there are 3 levels of inspections that federally certified inspectors can do. And when I say federally certified, the school that I go to is the same school that an officer or an inspector in Texas would go to, or in California. It's standardized across the country. There's a standardized test for it. There's standardized training. And so everyone has to be trained to those same standards. There are 3 normal levels of inspection that don't include basically radioactive or passenger vehicles. So they're level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 1 is the most intrusive. It's an absolute full inspection on the vehicle. Everything from checking wires or lighting, tires, wipers, and actually physically going underneath the truck and measuring the brake throw on every single brake chamber. That's the most comprehensive. In a level 2 inspection is basically a complete walk-around inspection, kind of looking between the tires, making sure it's basically doing a complete inspection with the exception of going underneath and actually looking at the undercarriage of the vehicle and the brakes itself. Level 2 inspection for New York is probably one of the most common for my troopers. The level 3 inspection is basically what they call a driver and registration inspection. So they look at the driver, they look at the registration documents, they look at the driver's logbook, his medical certificate, highway use tax permits, IFTA permits, things of that nature. So to answer that question, I just want to give you a little bit of background on the 3 levels that do exist. So I can tell you that in New York State right now there's approximately 140 or so level 1 inspectors that can do the most thorough examination. In contrast to that, we started training a lot of our road troopers and guys that you normally see in gray that are on the highways as level 3 inspectors. And the reason that we did that is statistics have shown over time that those extra interactions with the drivers and checking their hours, checking their logs, and just having that interaction with them actually prevents more crashes than doing a complete mechanical inspection on one truck. Obviously, it's less in duration. So, you know, one easy answer is that we have almost two times the amount of level 3 inspectors that we do actually have for level 1 inspectors. Again, we have roughly 300. We also trained about 25 members across the state in level 2 inspections. We don't allow them to go underneath the truck unless they are part of my unit. But again, they're basically road troopers that are wearing the gray uniform. They normally conduct basically criminal investigations and traffic enforcement, and we expanded their duties to allow them to do additional interaction with drivers. So again, the question's a little bit vague because it doesn't cover what the newest mix-up studies have shown. And that's really that the level 2 inspection is probably one of the most efficient in terms of preventing accidents. You're getting a good look at the mechanical side as far as your time spent ratio, verifying that the bulk of the major components that we're seeing that are normally have safety-related issues are working properly, and you have that driver interaction. But to have, like I said, our big push is to do level 3 inspections and to have more members doing those level 3 inspections, the regular road troopers. And if they find a mechanical issue as they're walking around and they look and they see that there's something that doesn't look right with a frame, there's something that doesn't look right with one of the tires, they're going to pick up the phone, they're going to call me, and we're going to dispatch one of my troopers out that is specially trained for that. So, and hopefully that answers your question.
So I have a number of questions here that I'll do my best to go through. I'll take them in whatever order here. But maybe I'll specifically address this question about the numbers of trucks, because I think that's obviously on everyone's mind. We dispatch about 50 trailers a day out of our Pennsylvania terminal, of which 10 to 20 go to individual customer sites that may or may not go throughout Otsego County. The balance typically go to a pipeline delivery point up in Manheim. So of those, 30 to 40 a day would be going on average through, 40 being peak. The perception is going to be twice that because they're going to come back empty.
It's
So-
not a perception. It's actually trucks.
Absolutely,
They go on the-
absolutely,
That's
absolutely.
ridiculous.
80 a day, going back and forth.
That's ridiculous.
24 hours a day.
Yeah, around
Correct.
the clock, all night long, keeping babies awake.
Correct.
You're saying 40 one way. That's what you said, right? 40? One way,
The trucks,
40.
80 in total, when we come back the other How many trips?
You said 40 one way,
Yes,
80 round trip.
30 to 40, 40 being a peak day.
Oh my God.
So XNG, how many times are canisters refilled? Do these become compromised with use? The canisters are typically filled over the course of a year, several hundred times. It could be as many as 1,000 times. They're tested by the manufacturer with tens of thousands of cycles. Every 5 years, the federal US DOT requires them to be hydrostatically retested and recertified. So there's a comprehensive study on them. They do not become compromised with use based on our experience. Who provides insurance coverage for any injuries? And what are the insurance limits? I'm not sure I'm as well versed in our max. We certainly have at least $5 million umbrella liability on any of our carriers. Was an environmental impact statement prepared under NEPA, federal, or CEQA state law? Who was the lead agency? CEQA would have related to our Mannheim terminal station. It was done under CEQA, and the town of Little Falls or Dolgeville was the lead agency on that. Do your drivers have hazmat experience when hired? Do they get training before making runs? The majority of our drivers are experienced drivers when hired. I would consider that the vast majority. We give our own training before anyone gets behind the wheel, not only on the operation of the tractors, doing test drives and the safety systems. So I think it's safe to say that they are in general hazmat. They're all hazmat certified. What they've hauled for particular cargo just depends on the driver. Does XNG have a bulk storage permit for its facility on Prentice Road or any of its facilities? I'm not certain that the specific bulk storage permit is, it's sort of a blanket statement. We certainly have got all the use permits for any of the sites that we're operating, but specifically a bulk storage permit, I'd have to look into whether or not that's a specific designation or not. XNG claims it is acting legally. How can this be when XNG has no Natural Gas Act Section 7 FERC Certificate of Convenience? With all respect, I would have to actually understand what the Section 7 FERC Certificate of Convenience
Interstate
is.
commerce and natural gas, bulk wholesale.
I can only say that we are certainly approved by FERC. In fact, we are the only carrier allowed by FERC to export to Canada. So FERC is certainly very well aware of the activity. I can't speak to that specific
They're aware
certificate.
of this activity.
I have every reason to believe so, but I can't speak to
I
the
wrote to
certificate of
FERC and
convenience.
asked for any applications or any a petition for a declaratory order from FERC, and they came back and said, no records meet your request.
I'm not surprised. I'm not sure what that would indicate. If it's not required, why would they have a record? XNG, do XNG drivers complete 2 runs per shift? Yes. Some do, depending on the length of the haul. Are any shifts longer than 12 hours? All of our drivers are held to the US DOT regs for 11 hours of drive time service. They can be associated with the route for up to 14 hours, but they can't be behind the wheel more than 11. So the question sort of splits the difference, but no one drives more than 11 hours on a shift. Most shifts are much shorter than that in terms of driving hours.
So if there are 2 runs, then that's more like 160 times that a truck is going by? If the same truck is being dispatched from Pennsylvania, and then it's going back and forth, that would be 4 times 40.
No, we consider each time the truck leaves Pennsylvania to be a delivery, and when it comes back, it would be a second pass. So no more than 40 on a peak day.
Matt,
would
there's
go
4
north.
per hour. There's 4 to 5 per hour. You can't
Yes.
bullshit the people in this
I know.
room.
We
We count the
live
trucks.
I'm telling, for anyone here, we have all the driver logs to support it, the references to 200 a day. We don't have the vehicles that could even possibly make that happen.
Well,
There's
I'm
certainly
not
the
saying
fact.
200, but I live on the route, and it's 24 hours a day, and it's every 10 minutes there is a truck going by.
I am
And on
I
Sunday, it's even
absolutely
worse.
acknowledge that at times, because of the dispatching, trucks may clump up, and within a given hour, more than 2 up to
Why
that
are they
might go
worse on
past.
Sundays?
There's no reason for them to be doing
No, there
anything
isn't.
differently on Sunday.
But they are.
I have no evidence of that. We certainly don't do anything differently on Sunday.
Seriously?
Yes, seriously. We don't dispatch anymore. I don't have any more drivers. I don't have any more trucks on the weekend. And gas is no more in use on Sunday than any other day of the week.
They're
Was there
more
ever
like-
any other alternate route considered when going through people's backyards?
We have looked at routes to get to any of our customers. Back to the routing we discussed earlier.
These are pipeline routes.
Yeah, this is not customers, this
This
is
is
a
a
pipeline.
pipeline.
The routing to any location where we deliver is something that's core to the business. So yes, we look at efficiency and safety.
Bottom line.
Of course.
So you're gonna ruin all our quality of life. You know, people that live on Canada Lake live 5 feet from the road. 80 trucks go by every day? Is that fair? Is that fair to the local people who pay the taxes that you're driving on? Why don't you use an interstate, 88, use a throughway. It'll cost you a little money, oh, bummer. So ruin my life and everybody else that lives along the route.
Are these records of truck weights, are they weighted when full? I think that the sergeant spoke to this, but our trucks all comply with state and federal highway weights.
You can
They're
answer
all
that question.
80,000 pounds. Do your drivers also fill the CNG tanks, or does someone else fills? We have operators that are at terminals, they're responsible for filling the trailers. Does XNG think it is acceptable to have had 3 major accidents in the short amount of time they've been starting driving up from PA? We do not think it's acceptable to have 1 accident, let alone 3. It's been an incredibly important issue for us. Each one of them involved an individual driver in unique circumstances. None of them are acceptable.
Matt, you said before there was 1 driver injured. Are you sure about that?
We've had 1 driver taken to the hospital and 1 that was considered by FM, Federal Motor Carrier
Didn't you
Safety
have-
Association to be a reportable driver injury.
Didn't you have 3 that were taken to the hospital?
We've had 3 drivers, and we always have them medically checked.
Didn't you have 3 that were taken to the hospital? And
That would be part of a medical check, of course. They've been in a car accident.
Can we let him finish answering those questions?
He's-
If there are questions afterwards, can we get to those? But let him go through.
He's
the answers.
lying.
Sir, please.
Where communities on XNG routes notify or consult, were public hearings held along these routes? We have consulted with communities at either end, but no, we don't typically consult on the routes in between. They're all state-approved highways, and the roads are legal for the use that we're putting them through. What are the environmental impacts of necessary quote-unquote releases after an accident? Has this been studied? The environmental impact, methane is lighter than air, it rises, it has a negative impact on ozone, and certainly it is like any release of methane, well studied in terms of its environmental impact. It does not have a ground impact, thanks to release, but it is certainly going to go up. Without your services, areas would likely need to explore alternative fuels, something that will eventually be the only option. How do you plan to support development of alternative fuels? I certainly believe that alternative fuels, I think our company would reinforce, are constantly evolving and being introduced and tested. Our business right now is natural gas, so I'm not sure we're alternately looking for a different fuel, but I certainly appreciate the sentiment. You are using and degrading roads in areas that do not receive any benefits, jobs, or money from your company. How do you justify this? How do you plan to balance this? We use the road system. I think that is the case, and like anyone using the road system, we have an impact over time that anybody would with a vehicle. I don't think we try to justify it, but we do try to be responsive to those communities, and if there's interest, please contact the county officials in your town office and use our contact information. Reach out to us and let's see if we can't understand the specifics and concern and whether we can do something about that.
We've been calling. What are you talking about?
If the roads are being, okay, I'm not sure we've been introduced in person, but I'll take that for granted. I think that's great because we obviously were being responsive. This is road degradation. If we're having an impact on the community's roads, by all means, bring it up to us. I'm not sure how else to respond to the question, but I'd be glad.
Those trucks wouldn't be having an impact on the roads.
Of course they do. All vehicles traversing the road have an impact on that road.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, but there aren't that many besides XNG. And most of them are doing local deliveries.
Again, I'll put that to the DOT as regarding the impact on the roads. Who picked the routes the trucks use? Are those routes available for first responders and citizens? We selected the routes, and we have briefed all the first responders along the routes regarding those, and not the citizens. We've not had public meetings on routes. Do routes get changed due to weather or road conditions, and are those detours publicly available? I think specific to that question, we will change a route if the route is unpassable or damaged or closed for that short period. We wouldn't typically make that a public notice because the impact would simply be shifting around a temporary event. There was a question submitted by somebody
Rob,
earlier that was on a piece of paper typed
Yeah,
up.
one piece of paper.
I submitted one that was on, I want to know, do you have a permit to run your Manheim facility 24/7?
Yes, I believe so. I'm not, we certainly don't have a permit restricting our hours of operation.
According to the AG's office, they didn't know that.
I'm not sure the AG was consulted on our local hours of operation, but it's completely possible the AG did not have awareness of that.
Where would I get to be able to take a
I
look?
think I talked with the town of Dolgeville as regarding any hours of operation concerns.
Did you tell any federal or state agency that you were reversing the flow of the Manheim facility in January of 2017?
I'm going to defer to Ed here for a moment. There is a missing question that was
Yeah.
related to materials.
Somebody handed in, they brought up 2 questions printed on paper, said and we seem to have lost one that was for XNG. Is the person that handed that in here, would they like to ask that question? He's got it out front.
It's a type question related
It was a
to,
type question, we wanted to get
Can we
into.
respond to a
But
couple
there were
of
2
verbal
no,
questions in the
we still have
meantime?
one. Oh, he has it.
Oh, perfect.
Here it comes. But these were 2 more that come in. You thought you were done, sorry.
it's all right.
There it is.
Perfect, thank you. Question, during an investigation conducted by the US DOT on August 25th, 2017, XNG was cited for a violation of hazardous material regulations. XNG violated regulation 171.16 with a footnote saying that's the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 49, Subtitle B, Chapter 1, Subchapter C, Part 171, Subpart B, 171.16. The narrative of the violation is as follows, quote, failing to properly make, submit, retain, or update a written report of hazardous material incident occurring during transportation. The investigation was completed and the case was closed on November 2nd, 2017. XNG was assessed a monetary civil penalty. Could you explain the incident that occurred during transportation and where it occurred? The context of this question is very detailed. I think it's probably based on those publicly available federal motor carrier safety audit records. And again, I'll encourage everyone to take a look at the website. It's all public. Regarding that, we had a comprehensive audit. That means a week-long audit of all of our personal records relating to the trailers, the trucks, the maintenance, the drivers, the hour of operation and service, any accidents. And so they bring in a team and they sit down. It is a process that's conducted with any licensed fleet on a quasi-regular basis. We had one in August. During that report, or during that audit, there was an issue raised with our tubes have what they a pressure burst disc, which is a safety feature that the manufacturer installs on them so if the tank is overpressurized, the pressure disc would fail. That would release the gas in a controlled way out of the truck. It's part of the design of the trailers. At a filling terminal, we had one of those discs let go. It was a manufacturer defect. The manufacturer reported the incident to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Association. It was our understanding that submission had been done completely. It was the auditor's opinion that we should have also filed during that period. We were fined $1,400 and we paid the fine. Are the trucks taking a shortcut on County Route 25A in Richfield? I can't comment on a shortcut or the road, but I'd be glad to try to get back.
Yes, you are.
I thought trucks are monitored via satellite, so you should know where they are all the time.
That's true. It's not that I can't answer the question whether we've traversed that road, I just don't actually run the logistics of it.
They need to send somebody who can
I see
answer the
them.
questions.
I travel, I see them all the time.
Because all you do is say, I can't answer the important questions. So why are we wasting our time here?
Appreciate that. Does XNG know where truck speeds are monitored? Are you monitoring within villages and hamlets where limits are less than 45 miles per hour?
That actually was for the Department of Transportation. It wasn't a question for you.
Perfect.
A couple more came in. Does XNG know where truck speeds are monitored? Are you monitoring within villages and hamlets where limits are 45? Well, the short answer is, I'm not sure what XNG knows as far as where speeds are monitored. DOT doesn't really monitor speeds, and law enforcement, you know, is our means of enforcing speed limits.
So if you would pass the question, that would be helpful.
Well, it's kind of a two-part question. I'll say this. DOT is very involved with setting speed limits. So, you know, we do have involvement. You know, we do periodically get asked to look at speed limits to see if they are reasonable or if they need to be raised or lowered. So DOT does have involvement in speed limits, but as far as enforcement and someone actually being there, you know, checking speeds, I mean, it's law enforcement. That's our guys in the gray. Let me go through the other two questions that came in, and I'll just set this one aside if somebody wants to tackle that. This one it's a little bit off topic, but it's pertinent. Are you aware of the intention to build a Dollar General store on Route 205 between Lawrence and Mount Vision? How will you assess the risk of adding traffic at a blind turn on Route 205 along the XNG route? This is something that the region needs to be monitoring. Well, any new development, whether it be a box store like, you know, a Dollar General, or, you know, any large commercial property that's going in, they have to go through a process that's special use permitting and site plan committee type permitting. Usually the county planning office is the lead agency on that, and DOT, if it's on a state route, is involved with issuing a permit so that they can put in their driveway. Part of the criteria associated with their driveway is site distance, along with several other, you know, design, engineering type factors, drainage, pavement type, you know, all those things. So the short answer is, I don't know this particular one. It will come through our office. The permitting office is part of the Traffic Safety Mobility Group. I'm not really familiar with whether this one has already come in or is in process, but it, you know, will be reviewed. It will be an engineering firm that puts together the plans for it. So, you know, we'll work with them to make sure that they're meeting the criteria.
And will the current status of the XNG traffic be part of the calculus for doing that assessment?
It depends on what their traffic generation is, and by them I mean the facility that's going in. And what we have to do with regard to that is, I mean, our thresholds basically state that if they have a certain amount of traffic entering or exiting their facility, then they're required to do a traffic impact study. So, you know, without knowing, you know, what their potential traffic patterns are going to be or generation is going to be, I can't say whether they'll have to, you know, do a traffic impact study. But definitely the amount of traffic on the road that they're entering into is part of that. You know, it is part of that. The type of traffic is not as much a part of that, you know, whether it's, you know, high truck volumes versus, you know, high passenger vehicle volumes. It's more just based on the amount of traffic. And the last question here, and I'm going to apologize up front, I don't have an answer for this. How much highway use tax is paid per trip at this point? I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't know how highway use tax is calculated. It's not something that we get into very often, you know, at the engineering side of DOT. I'm not really even sure who would have an answer to that particular question. So, apologize for that. I'm going to leave that one question here regarding speed limits as far as enforcement, just in case somebody can speak to that.
Tony, could I just address one of your questions? So, do you think one of these trucks going on 205 or these small two-lane highways, should they be going 55 miles an hour?
Well, we set our speed limits based on what the safe operating speed for that portion of highway is.
Because when you drive by them, a lot of times they're almost straddling the line because the roads are so narrow. And there's like this suction that you have to hold on to your car because 55 for a giant truck like that is just too fast.
Well, what I can say with regard to that is when it comes to requesting speed limit study, we take those requests from anyone. It can be, you know, the police ask us quite frequently. We get a lot from private citizens. We get a lot from local communities, you know. Anybody can request us to take a look at a speed limit at any time, and we always do. So, yeah. Thanks.
I'll try and answer the enforcement question quick. So from the state police perspective, obviously our normal road troopers that you'll see, you know, passing and driving down on a daily basis, they're responsible for everything from enforcing all the criminal laws. They handle all sorts of complaints. If your garage gets broken into, if your car gets dinged, if you know you have a larceny complaint, burglaries, robberies, rapes, kidnappings, you know, you name it, that's the first line trooper that is going to respond to that. So in addition to that, those responsibilities on the criminal side, they also handle basically the traffic side as well. There are dedicated troopers that normally are on the interstates as well, but those troopers are also serve as backup for the troopers that you know, respond to a domestic situation with multiple people fighting. So from an enforcement side, if the stations are aware that there's a particular problem in an area, as they targeted State Route 28, if there's a particular area that you feel that vehicles are speeding, they will assign the troopers when they're available to sit and monitor that area, and they're basically required to report back to the station sergeant on their findings, and they'll sit, you know, during those periods of time when you know, when there's evidence that there's, you know, when, you know, somebody has brought to our attention that somebody is speeding through that area, and they try to address it via enforcement. So I would encourage you, if you do have an issue and you have a particular area that you feel that somebody is speeding in, let the sergeants know, let the stations know. They'll turn around and assign a trooper, and they'll monitor it for a set period of time. And if it continues to be a problem, obviously they'll take enforcement efforts, whether it's a car, whether it's a truck, it doesn't matter. The first line efforts are all going to be done by the station.
That can answer the question.
Okay.
The question is whether or not, wherever you're already monitoring, it includes the villages and hamlets, or if you're only monitoring the 55-mile-an-hour zones that are in the long strips between those.
Okay. So the troopers monitor traffic all the way, every day as they're traveling down the road. My radar stays on the entire time that I'm in my car. So whether it's I'm in a 30-mile-an-hour zone, a 50-mile-an-hour zone, a 15-mile-per-hour school zone, you know, they're actively monitoring the traffic that's coming at them. And if they have an area where it's, you know, we have an identified issue or problem, they will actually sometimes just sit in that particular area. If we have a school zone, if we have that particular area that you're referencing, I can't speak to you know, where exactly the troopers were set up. I can, you know, possibly forward that to Sergeant Gombach. He might have more detailed information on that. But if you do have an area in a particular zone or, you know, particular speed area that you want looked at or that you feel is they're not complying with, then absolutely, you know, you have to share that information with us.
Every single one of the villages along 205, where they're supposed to be slowing down to 35 or 40 miles an hour, it's not a single village. There are multiple places where the speed limit on 205
Sure,
is not.
and we patrol all of those. We patrol the villages, we patrol the towns, we patrol the hamlets, and you know our troopers don't just stay on a 55-mile-per-hour road. We write tickets in any village, any city, any town. It doesn't matter. We have statewide jurisdiction, so you know we don't just look at 55. You know, we're in everywhere. So there was somebody brought up a quick question on highway use tax. On the enforcement side, we enforce whether or not the company has highway use tax. But if you go to the Taxation and Finance website, there's actually a breakdown where you can see for an 80,000-pound vehicle what they have to pay per mile. So I don't have those numbers because obviously, you know, the trucks that we deal with, not all of them are 80,000 pounds, and I can't commit their whole chart to memory. But if you do look at it, it's Taxation and Finance on their website. Look at highway use tax. It'll break down the weights of the vehicles and the per mileage fee that they have to pay to New York State at the end of every quarter.
So what should be done when I see an XNG truck running onto the shoulder should we call 911 right then and take a picture of their license plate? What should be done?
I mean, if you feel that the truck is creating a true hazard and you think that they're going to hurt somebody, then absolutely, it's an emergency situation. Did they cross the white line? If they're drifting off the shoulder and if you truly feel that it's going to cause an accident, yes. And then what we'll do is we'll dispatch a car and send a car up to try to stop that truck and interview the driver. I think we've all looked down and crossed over a fog line or a center line at some point. I know I'm guilty of it, just like everybody else. But at the same time, if you feel that the truck is creating a hazard and you really believe that it's going to cause an accident, then absolutely pick up the phone and call 911. Absolutely, and the troopers will, or sheriff, or whoever's the closest car, will investigate it. And have to go up and try to find that vehicle and stop it, and to ensure the safety that, the driver is okay. He's not having any sort of medical episode, he's not, doing something illegal. Again, but I would encourage that if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you see a car swerving in front of you, and you think that, he's possibly intoxicated, the same rules apply. So, thank you. You're welcome.
First question we have is, what is the role of the New York State Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Services in regulating this activity? The context that we have with Homeland Security is not a regulating agency, they're an advisory agency. If there are specific questions that need to be brought up, they're willing to answer and provide information, but as far as regulating, they do not have any regulatory authority. Second question, the event of fire, how do the firefighters respond? We have the emergency response guides that are the hazardous materials response guides that we go by. First and foremost, obviously, is for us to secure the scene, to remove any of the general public, to make sure everyone is evacuated to a safe area. There are regulations set up for each one of the particular guidelines. For this, initially, this type of spill, they say 330 feet initially. If you feel uncomfortable with that, you can extend it out as far as half a mile, 800 meters from the site of the spill.
Art, that was my question. My question specifically was about the use of water. I didn't mention that, but can you describe the use of water for firefighters?
The use of water in the event that the tanks actually are on fire, they are extended from large hand lines are used from a safe distance away. We are instructed, part of the emergency response guys, you do not spray water where the gas is venting from. And that's any gas, because what's going to happen is that may actually freeze and cause more of a danger. So you're going to use usually we would use unmanned or large hand lines from a safe distance in keeping it set that way.
Are you familiar with the advisory that came out of Indianapolis of the CNG trash truck that it actually exploded, and it had to do with the use of water?
That is a CNG gas truck. Those are not with the same tanks, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, they are. Type 4, they are, absolutely are. They're just smaller.
They are tanks, however, the tanks that we're dealing with are in the trailers mainly. I assume that is not a trailered tank that was on that garbage truck.
No, I mean, it was not.
And the final question, sorry, what is the worst case scenario for one of these trucks having an accident on Otsego County highways? Based on our procedures, the worst case scenario is the fact that there is a serious injury or a death involved with the accident itself. Secondly is the fact that if we're not able to get there quick enough and general public inserts themselves onto a scene, we do our best, obviously, to respond as quickly as possible to any emergency situation, to secure that scene, remove any of the general public away from causing any problems with that. Worst case scenario, a vehicle rolling over, someone getting hurt, stabilizing that and evacuating the scene to make sure everyone is safe.
What about houses along the route?
Excuse me?
What about houses adjoining the road along the route?
With a natural gas leak in these compressed natural gases, if there is a leak, this gas is lighter than air. It is not going to sink down.
Or an explosion?
In order for an explosion, there is a what they call lower level and a higher level of danger, being 5, the reading is 5, between 5 and 15. The release that we had, the controlled release that we had on State Highway 205, the highest reading we had at that point in time during the evacuation of the gas was 0.4. It is flammable between 5 and 15. Less than 5, it's not rich enough. Over 15, it's too rich. It will not burn. Those levels were at a 0.4 in the open air.
But are we talking worst case scenario?
Forgive me, I just,
So if you're at this magic number, what would happen to our house?
there would be a fire. There would be fire. As there would be with any other fuel vehicle that traveled down. If there was a fire, you'd have the exact same thing.
But there aren't 80 of them right by your house, I guess.
Understood.
Five or six more questions were submitted here. I'll take them in the order they were submitted. Did XNG inform the town of Manheim it planned to insert gas in the pipeline as part of the Manheim permitting process? Did they notify towns along the route? So it's in two parts. It's actually the town of Dolgeville, and we discussed gas both in and out. The formal permitting process didn't have a requirement on the gas direction, and that was fully discussed with the town. Did they notify towns along the route? No, because we didn't have a route set at the time of permitting. XNG has a permit to take gas from the Iroquois pipeline, I think, at Manheim for local delivery. Instead, it's a variation of the same question. Instead, XNG is transporting 420,000 cubic feet of gas in each of 40 trucks per day. Does XNG have a permit to put gas into Iroquois at Manheim? Our terminal complies with all federal and state permits that are required of it.
Why did you get a fine?
Recently, we did have a notice of violation. We built the terminal. We used all electric compressors. There's no requirement for an air permit because there is no emissions from the electrical compressors. We installed a gas compressor, and for redundancy purposes, as a source of emissions, it was picked up in an audit several months later. We immediately filed for the air permit. It was the first filing. It was an oversight, and we paid a fine for that issue. It was not intentional, but it was a change of the equipment on site, and it should have been picked up by our team.
It was just for redundancy purposes. That's what you're telling me.
We operate 24 hours a day, and
No,
so
that's not
we
my
have
question.
redundancy.
Those
built
electric
into all our
compressors
systems.
are taking gas off the Iroquois. The gas fire puts gas onto the Iroquois. That doesn't seem to be a redundancy to me. That seems like a completely different function.
Factually incorrect. If there are 40 loaded trucks every day now, what are projected for future numbers of trucks? Is there any limit? As far as projections go, we actually are growing our business across the Northeast. We don't have any specific projections. We actually try to get each customer one at a time. Would XNG consider voluntarily moving its route to interstates in response to public concern? We do operate a lot of our routes on the interstate, in particular the route that's coming through Otsego County, as previously discussed, is the only efficient route for our business at this point in time. That relates to the drivers and it relates to the safety. So driving twice as far on the interstate, unfortunately, won't work for the business.
Is it really twice as far?
It's significantly longer. It would violate the hours of service requirements for our driver. I can assure. What about the CNG trash truck that exploded? Matt Smith wrote in an email to Art Klinger that trucks can't explode, physically impossible. I think it's important for everyone who's got fire concerns to understand that what inside the tanks are, for all intents and purposes, without oxygen. It takes oxygen to combust. And so the tanks cannot get a spark inside them. They cannot physically explode. It is simply a misrepresentation. If the gas is coming out of the tank and it mixes with the right combination of oxygen, I think as Art said, 5 to 15%, those are combustible conditions for that particular fuel.
What about the CNG trash truck in Indianapolis last year that exploded with Type 4 carbon fiber tanks, just like what you're using?
I can't comment. I'm not in the trash business. I'm not aware of the incident.
Just to correct you, Matt, it is the town of Manheim and the village of Dover.
Appreciate that. For Matt, describe the 3 MVA incidents. Do you consider the May 27, 2017 venting in Binghamton an incident? So 2 separate questions. Previously referenced incidents, I would describe those as motor vehicle accidents. There have been 3. The first one was a driver in Pennsylvania, I think in May of 2017, no, I'm sorry, in February of 2017, who was found after the incident, again, single vehicle incident, to have been speeding. The truck navigated a turn at excess speed and left the roadway. The second...
And rolled over, just like around here.
Roadway. There was no release of gas from the tanks during the incident, just like the other 2. The second incident involved a driver coming down a long hill. It is unclear what the source of distraction was for that driver, but the driver did again leave the edge of the road. We believe the driver may have been distracted.
Yeah, because the edge of the road's about that big, so.
Well, this is also
That's a really
in
safe
Pennsylvania.
road for a truck.
That was 3 rollovers, Tucker.
And then the third trailer incident did happen in Hartwick. That driver was found again to have been distracted driving and was reaching for something on the floor at the time of the incident.
Okay, well,
So if
talk
that should happen
talk
on the
about.
side of Canandaigua Lake, you'll just kill a couple people in the house, what the hell?
I
It's cost doing business.
sincerely can't imagine that scenario.
Oh,
Matt,
really, you couldn't?
Matt, what happened
80 trucks a day, you can't imagine that?
Matt, what happened in Binghamton, May 27th?
You should be ashamed of
Can you
yourself.
describe the May 27th, 2017 incident in Binghamton, please, Matt?
No, I can't. I'm sorry.
You can't or you won't?
I can't.
Why can't you?
I'm not certain which incident you're describing.
There was a truck, there was one of your trailers that
I'm sure you're
completely
referencing
vented.
an incident.
Huh?
I'm sure you're referencing an incident. I do appreciate it. That's not the 3 incidents that were previously referenced or that were considered reportable incidents by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Association.
So that wasn't, what, the Binghamton May 27th incident was not reportable?
I'm not able to honestly discuss because I'm not certain what you're describing.
Excuse me, there are 100 people in this room, and I think 90 of them have one question. There is an alternative route, the state roads, for you to get your product from Montrose, PA, to Little Falls. Exactly. It's Interstate 81, I-90. All this safety stuff we've been talking about here for the last hour would be diminished by 90%. Because everybody's going the same direction. We have 20-foot mediums up to 100-foot mediums, not yellow lines dividing them. We don't have houses 5, 10, 20 feet off the road. Is there that much of an expense, more of an expense, to run 81 to 90 to Little Falls versus 205 to 28 down Pickerman Hill, one of the worst hills in the state?
Really dangerous.
I can't believe that your company is beating your trucks up on state roads, beating our roads up when there's a perfectly good alternative route that is 20, maybe 25 minutes longer. I get it, but the money you would be saving your trucks, it just boggles my mind. As a trucker. And you sit here with the ability to answer the question, how much money is you're going to lose? You're not carrying a $500 payload of stone or hay. Lord knows how much fuel and what it's costing. So is the extra money by percentage, gonna make that big a difference? That's what's bothering people here.
Yes.
Bottom line, all this other stuff,
That's
I
it.
appreciate all the safety thing and everybody concerned, but we have interstates for business being done that you folks are doing.
Not to mention the fact that a friend of mine was almost involved in an accident when one of your trucks decided to pass her, her daughter, who was in another car, and 2 farm vehicles on a blind curve on 205. And I know that she called XNG. Her daughter was shaking. And that's what these roads are. These are not roads for massive trucks to run your natural gas business. If they're delivering to us, fine. But they are not for you to run from Pennsylvania up to Mannheim so that your company can earn a buck off of our lives.
You don't care about safety, or you wouldn't be doing it.
All right,
Shane, you don't care about your neighbors, you don't care
This
about
is going to conclude our question and
Oh,
answer.
really?
We will take a couple more questions if there are questions. If we are attacking our panelists, that's not what they're here for. If we have a question that would like to be answered, we can do it. We can be respectful to everybody here and our panelists. All right? Is there a question? Can I get one at a time and respect the person asking the question by not interrupting?
Can you name some of the businesses that you actually go to and run with natural gas?
I can name any that are public, but we have the same respect for the confidentiality and the fuel sources that those businesses use as any other. I think the most relevant one that's publicly available is we work directly with NYSEG. We supply the town of Mechanicville as a reference.
How can we study the potential impacts if we don't know the routes? How can we truly assess the environmental impacts without knowing the routes?
Gentleman behind.
You got here?
I was curious if the Constitution pipeline was designed to dump gas from Iroquois and Tennessee, and if that was built, would your trucks go away? But they wouldn't have a need to go back and forth. Is that correct?
I think our business supplying areas that don't have a pipeline is not going away. I think that if a pipeline was to be increased in size or another one was put in to feed it, it might change the need for the gas in that particular location. Yeah.
In the back there.
What brought this all on to begin with, change that was demand for the business trucks, as well as how long have you been doing this?
So we started the business in 2012, and we
You've
started.
been going through 205 since 2012?
No, we were first customers in New York in 2014.
So you've been going on Route 205 since 2014?
The individual routes and the terminals may have changed. We did a lot of operation out of Mannheim while we built Pennsylvania. We've been expanding geographically. So I can't say whether or not routes were on 205. They certainly weren't doing the trucking that we're doing now because we have a customer and a point-to-point delivery on that route.
So what brought on a condition for you to have to create this route, to have to deliver gas to Mannheim?
There is a lack of gas flowing through the pipeline that serves Albany and into western New England. And so part of our business was a reach out from the operator of the pipeline as an alternative way to get gas into the pipe.
One last one.
Yes, this is for Matt. The question is, what was your volume out of the Mannheim facility prior to January of 2017? How many trucks per day, per month?
That's confidential. We're not here to talk about our business.
So, I mean, the point of my question is to say that delivering to your so-called, your core customers, that is a minuscule part of your business compared to this virtual pipeline between Forest Lake, PA, and that. I mean, that's the root of the question is, besides your confidentiality, those universities and cheese factories, paper mills, whatever hospitals, whatever you're delivering to, that makes up 1/10 of your business or less. 1% of your business. 99% is.
That's not true, but I appreciate appreciate it.
Well, tell us, I want to know, tell the people here, we want to know, what percentage of it?
Why did you not disclose that you were intending to fill the Iroquois pipeline with gas from Pennsylvania when you applied to Mannheim for the facility there? Why did you not disclose that that was your plan when you asked the PSC to waive their authority?
We have the ability to put gas in and take gas out of that pipeline. That was fully discussed with all of them.
It was not. You told the PSC something completely different.
So it seems as if, it seems that the question is, their alternative route is to take the interstates, right? And the difference between going 205 to the interstates, how much? That's a Google map question. It's 236 versus 258. If you tell me you can't do 258, it doesn't work.
Correct.
What math doesn't work?
11 hours of drive time and the toll.
5 hours each way.
And the tolls, because I said and the tolls.
5 hours is full. It's 2 hours.
At least you're being honest.
And the way station on 88.
It's a cost of doing business. It does not.
No, so it's not the drive time, but those are two different, the answer, whatever the answer is, just give us the truth. The answer is that it doesn't work for the drivers, is one answer. If it's because it's more expensive, that's another answer.
It is all a factor of consideration, specifically that we are a one-way trip. It doesn't admit.
I don't think people realize the amount of tax that they pay, road tax, within this country, and for the state, federal, and everything. And then the road tax comes back to the towns to pay for their roads.
Was there any other questions? All right, we're going to conclude. I'd like to thank Rob Bryan, our landlord, Karen Sullivan for organizing this event. Analysts, State Police, DOT, XNG, Art. Thank all of you for showing up here tonight and attending. I hope some concerns have been alleviated. Thank you. Have a safe drive home this evening.